Good morning to you. All of you can hear me? So first of all, let me welcome you to this program. And I would like to congratulate all of you for completing your MBBS. And now you must understand that you are joining a select band of people who are very, very lucky. You will be thinking, why I am saying that you are very lucky? Because you must be thinking that I have worked hard, I have studied hard to join medicine, and it's all my efforts. But it is not like that. We have lucky in a way that we are getting a chance to serve people. Especially people when they are in distress, when they are in pain, and when they have a lot of anxiety. So in a way, we are getting a chance to serve the people, to relieve their anxiety, their fears, their tensions, and of course, their medical care also. So you must think that a lot of people in this world don't get this opportunity to take care of the patients when really they are in distress. So I welcome you all to the band of doctors now who will be taking care of the patients at all the times. So most important thing when you are treating a patient or taking care of the patient is one should not cause any harm to the patient. This will look little ironic when I am talking about, but over a period of time you will also understand that we should not cause any harm to the patient. And the most important concern I would just like to know from you when you are taking care of the patient is what? Somebody can just say, even if it is wrong, it is okay. Huh? Consent. More than that? Somebody else can say? Is patient safety. So patient safety is utmost important when you are going to take care of the patients. Again, you will think that patient is coming here for getting treated, and why are we talking about this? Over a period of time you will come to know, and in the subsequent lectures they will also tell you why patient safety we keep on talking and harping on this particular issue. So patient safety must be kept in mind at all the times whenever you are taking, whenever your seniors are giving you instructions, whenever your co-workers are not thinking about patient safety, you must see that patient safety is very, very important. Details of the patient safety methods and ways will be told to you in the subsequent classes. I will just touch on these also a little bit. Another thing, you have to work now as a team. You must remember that you are a part of the healthcare system. So you cannot work independently, or I cannot work independently unless I work with a team. So you are a part of a team member. But at the same time, if you are a part of a member, at times will come when even at this level, you will have to take the leadership role. Suddenly you go to the ward and you see the patient is having cardiac arrest. The paramedical workers will not be able to initiate everything. So you have to see that you have to take the initiative, had a leadership role, and guide everybody and motivate them to do the best. So you have to have a dual role, so you must keep in mind that. During your course of internship, all of you will be posted in the various departments, medical departments, surgical departments, and other. This thing is to orient you all to the care of the patients in the various departments. But you must remember that if you are posted in one department and in the beginning and in the end some other department, you must always think that the patient is one. And system wise you cannot differentiate the patient. Whenever you are treating a patient of head injury, you cannot forget that he has other organs also. So that is why when you are posted in each department, you have to learn the skills that are required to manage the department wise or the organ wise. But at the same time, you must remember that all organs of human beings are interconnected with each other. And you take care of one organ or you miss that, it is going to affect the other organs also. For example, I will give you, when a head injury patient comes, you have to manage, you have to assess. They will tell you in the department of the EMS or in the neurosurgery department how to manage head injury. First thing they will tell you is you have to protect the spine. Same time, they will tell you to assess the Glasgow Coma Scale. I think you must be all aware of that, or if not, soon you will learn all that. So you must learn that. Then when you go to Department of Anesthesia and Critical Care, they will be focusing in one particular area. All these departments, wherever you go, they will be focusing in one particular area of the patient management. Like when you go to Anesthesia and Critical Care, they will always tell you how to give oxygen therapy. It is very, very important to know oxygen therapy. I think all of you must agree that oxygen is a drug. Though it is available in the atmosphere, it is just 21% or 20% in the atmosphere. But when you give a drug to the patient, you know, if you give excess drug, it may cause harm to the patient. Same thing is with the oxygen. So Department of Anesthesia will tell you what percentage of oxygen is to be given, in what conditions, how to give, various techniques that you use. Second thing, they will also tell you how to control the airway. Because without controlling the airway, the further management of the patient is not possible. Similarly, they will also tell you about what central venous access, how to get, how to do the monitoring, what is the importance of monitoring, what monitorings are important in a particular situation. So each department will focus on something. So when you go to obstetric and gynae department, they will tell you how to take care of the antenatal, the mother in the antenatal period. How to see that the baby is also developing well or not, what is the progress of the pregnancy in the mother. And they will also tell you that if the patient asks or the mother asks, how to give relief during the labor, because pain relief is very, very important. So these departments, so why I am telling you examples of few departments, because when you are managing a patient, he may go to one department, but you have to give a comprehensive health care. So you must think about when you are managing a neurosurgery or a general surgery or cardiac surgery patient or a medicine patient, you have to think that the patient is one, and you have to have a holistic approach so that you manage the patient properly, taking care of all the vital parameters, and subsequently you should develop the skills such a way that you take care of these patients. So I just want to know what is the most important thing as a doctor you must know. You go to any department, but you must know this, and you must practice it. You must acquire the skill. You may have to take a leadership role and initiative to teach others. What is the most important thing? Not only doctors, paramedicals, everywhere you have to do that. What is the most important thing that you must know as a doctor? Communication skill is not that, others can also have. As a doctor, what is very, very important? That everybody must be knowing it, everybody must be thorough it, and you should be able to disseminate to every group of individuals, maybe doctors, maybe non-doctors also. Can somebody come out? No? No? Decision making applies to all the fields, no? Basic life support. See, as a doctor, you should not tell, even if you become a cardiac surgeon, you become an endocrinologist, you become a nephrologist, you must be thorough in basic life supports and advanced life support, along with the management of how to use a defibrillator. These are things which you must be thorough with it. And in our institute, we have got these mannequins where you can get yourself trained in various departments. In this department also, medical education department, they have got Department of Emergency Medical Services, they have got, in anesthesia and critical care department, they also got. So you must, whenever you are posted in this, you must become thorough. It is very, very important. See, if you become a surgeon, like you say, you become a neurosurgeon, but the patient has to come to you, no? Till that time, if you are not able to give basic life support, patient will never reach the hospital or will never reach your operation theatre where you can operate. So important thing is basic life support you must know thoroughly. Whichever department you join some department like non-clinical department, anatomy or pharmacology or anything, any other department, you must know that how to give basic life support. Definitely, without that, you should not be labeled as a qualified doctor. You understand that? I think I am able to impress upon you the importance of that. And you will not believe that this basic life supports you may have to give it anywhere. Maybe at your home, if unfortunate incidents happens at home. If you are going on the road, it can happen on the road. It can happen on the plane. It can happen on the train. It can happen in the vegetable market. So I can tell you from my own experience, I had gone to buy vegetables. Suddenly when I saw one lady who was selling the coriander, she had a convulsions. And everybody was trying to do something funny. Somebody came, gave a slipper in front of her mouth and nose and telling her to smell. Nobody was bothered that she should be made to lie down, turn on one side so that she does not aspirate if some problem is there, and she has to be protected. So basic life support is very, very important. Another incident I had was there was an accident in front of me on the road. Patient had a cardiac arrest, and you will not believe, we resuscitated her on the road, and she went to the hospital and survived and recovered completely. Similarly, I had a chance to have in a train accident. You will see the train accident, a lot of people get injured. So I was witness to that. One fellow fell down, one of the guard, and he was bleeding everywhere. So all that was needed was, again, people were telling me, you give him water, you give him water. So if you give a water to a patient who is semi-conscious, you know he will be drowning in the water that you are going to give. So basic life support is airway has to be protected. See that patient gets airway doesn't get obstructed, and patient does not aspirate. Similar thing happened to me in flight also. Same thing happened, like a lady had when I was just landing in Srinagar. We are about to land, then the patient had a convulsions. Again, everybody was telling, no, make her straight, give her this, give her some water. So all that I had to do was remove her from the chair and made her lie in the ISL, turn her on one side, see that her airway is protected. And by the time we landed, we had already informed the ambulance services. They all came, and she didn't have any problem. So you must remember that why basic life support is very, very important. I keep on stressing this because I have met a lot of doctors who think basic life support is not important. But towards the end of their career, they realize, no, I should have known basic life support. I should have prevented somebody's problem at my home or on the road. So you must remember that you have to take care of that. Another thing important in medicine is prevention. See, you all know prevention is better than cure. You can prevent so many things very easily. Simple steps are required to prevent. Like when you are giving a syringe, a drug intravenously with the help of a syringe, you have to see that there is no air bubble in that. Especially if you are going to give a 50 ml syringe and pushing something through that. If you see that, always prevent air to inside. So it is very easy to, but because treating a complication is not so easy, because the consequences may be quite disastrous before you start treatment. So prevention is very, very important of all the things. You must be knowing that in our institute you will see everywhere we are having outlets and the indicators for fire safety. Why are we having it? It is not that everyday fire is going to be there, but we have put everywhere fire safety measures so that in the event of a fire they will automatically function and we will be able to prevent the fire engulfing the area of the hospital or in the room. So prevention is very, very important. Next important is some medical skills you will be acquiring everywhere you go. But the most important is also non-medical skills. I think you are already been introduced that communication is very, very important. I just want to stress a little bit. I am not saying that I will go into the details because you have a separate class, what is the importance of communication, how to communicate and all that. But I will just communication is very, very important, especially whenever you are managing a crisis or acute critical care, you are doing a patient. Communication should be very clear and it is very, very important. One thing, when you are communicating, you should not assume something. That you are told something and okay, that fellow has heard it. It will not be like that. So there are various steps where the communication can create a problem. I will just write down something. It's not visible. Eh? So you can see now, if you think something that you have said something and you assume that person has heard. So what has happened? He has not, you have not said what you are telling. So if you say that this gap you have to close, don't assume anything. You say everything clearly. Similarly, you can close the gap here. How will you know whether whatever you have told your colleague to do, whether he has heard or not? So you communicate to him, ask him whether he has heard or not. Next step is, even if that fellow has heard, whether he has understood what you are telling. Suppose you tell him to give a particular drug intravenously, whether he has heard that it has to be given intravenously or by intramuscular route or by whatever route. So if he has understood, whether he has done it accordingly. So what happens is, you have to close all these gaps. And also you have to see that the instructions that are given are understood by persons that you are giving and heard. Similarly, whenever somebody is giving you instructions, if you have a doubt that you are not heard, it is a 50 milligram whatever is told, or 5 milligram or 20 milligrams, then don't hesitate. Ask persons, your colleagues who are telling you to give a particular drug or particular thing they are telling, whether really it is like that or not. Because this is where, if these gaps are not closed, we have a lot of problems to the patient, and most of the times it will be disasters. Now, can you tell me some drugs which you must be knowing, no? Which are available as units, which we always tell you give in this units, this many units per kg, or this units per milligram or per minute, something like that. Insulin. Some other drugs? Vitamin C, no? Vitamin D, A, D, then heparin, oxytocin, no? So this, why I am harping on to this is, again, now like you are giving instruction for a diabetic patient, that you are telling somebody that give 20 units in 500 ml and you put it at this particular rate. But you are assuming, no, that when you told units, that person has understood that it is units. Because especially drug like heparin and insulin, they are available in the vials and they contain much more than what you are advocating. So if that person thinks that it is not units and it is ml, you can imagine what will happen if 5 ml of insulin is added to the patient, to the drip, the 500 milligram. In no time, patient will have severe hypoglycemia. So you must understand this, that whatever instructions you are giving are being followed. And I am not giving you anecdotal examples. We have had like this, and now in spite of this world where communication is very fast and very quick, still these things happen. I instructed the nursing staff to add 5 units of insulin in a 500 ml of a bottle on the phone for a preoperative period. And when the patient came, suddenly patient was totally unconscious to the operation theatre. And then I just was wondering why patient was unconscious, because morning patient was all right. There was no reason. Patient was posted for ENT, some small job, small surgery. Then I just saw that what was written. We always instruct them also that you must write on the bottle what drug is giving, especially when you are giving infusions. So luckily for me, that nurse has written 5 ml added. So immediately I know what is the problem. So, but why it has happened that I thought, okay, the sister has understood what I had told. Though I had confirmed it, what has happened is she has told to another sister to give it. And they have not communicated with each other, and I didn't verify whether it has been given correctly or not. So communication is very, very important in these type of things. Like you tell the persons correctly whether it is being followed or not. Then similarly, there are some drugs, like vasopressors, vasodilators. They are given as microgram per kg per minute, especially when you are giving an infusion. So in that, if you don't write your microgram properly, the person who is loading the syringe pump or in the bottle, what he is going to do? He is put in a milligrams. If you are written microgram, instead of that micro word, you are written M. So what is going to happen? Patient will receive drug in milligrams per kg. So if he is a vasodilator, patient will collapse. If it is a a vasopressor, patient's blood pressure will shoot up and it will be having a disastrous consequences. So you must remember that. Then there are some places where there are do's and don'ts. Every person who is going to address you after me, they will be telling you what are the do's and what are the don'ts in the various areas. So I will just harp on to few things which are very, very important and which you will be facing in all the departments, not only in one particular department. One is you will be giving blood transfusion in all the departments. So one must see that wrong blood should never be administered. Wrong means either the blood group is wrong or the positive blood is being given to a patient who is negative. And that you must stop at all level. And you will not believe, in every institute it does happen. Sometimes we detect it before the disaster consequences. But this is one event which should never occur in your lifetime. I'll tell you my own example. I was a senior resident here and I was doing anesthesia for one case. One house surgeon was with me. So there was one patient posted for abdominoperineal resection. And patient suddenly lost a lot of blood during the surgery. So I told my junior resident, plus just check the blood and give it. So what happened is, I thought that his fellow has understood how the checking is done, without realizing that he is an NPG person. He doesn't have experience how to check the blood. But that time I also could not leave the patient because there was no ventilator. So I was mechanically ventilating the patient. But I understood that he has realized what I had told is. So he started the blood. And the whole blood patient received. Luckily nothing happened to the patient. At that time patient was bleeding, so we kept on giving it fast. At the end of the procedure, one of the senior nursing officer came and she was just checking, doctor, you have given a wrong blood to the patient. And you will not believe, I had to learn this lesson very hard, because next day my head of the department of anesthesia told me the same day in the afternoon, you go and sit near the patient for 24 hours and follow the patient for next 7 days, what will happen. But see, I was lucky, rather the patient was so lucky that the combination was universal recipient and a universal donor. The patient was universal recipient and the donor was universal donor. So luckily for the patient and for me, there was no complication of any blood transfusion. But it may not happen for all the time. But from that day, senior residency day till today, I never give a blood without checking myself. Even though I became professor of anesthesia, head of the department, whenever the blood is being given in the operation theatre, I will check myself, I will ask 10 times people whether blood is checked or not properly. And that is the importance that you must give to this incidence. Because as an intern, you will be told so many times, you go get the blood and start it. And what will happen if you don't check? Acute tubular necrosis can occur, patient can have various reactions, and patient may succumb to your transfusion, which was, intention was very good, but what has happened? So you must remember. Similarly, wrong site surgeries. You will think how it can happen. Yes, this is because of the lack of communication. It happens all the time, all over the world. I don't know whether you people have seen or heard about the incidents of one of the actress's mother was operated by the world's best neurosurgeon in US on the wrong side of the brain. We don't believe that, no, it can happen by the best person, but it has happened. Similarly, there was one incident, orthopedic incident in one of the Delhi hospitals. That wrong side of the leg was operated on a fractured patient. I still am not able to comprehend how it can happen, because the moment you open up, you see that there is no fracture there. But still, I don't know how it happened, but there was a news and it was like correctly told that yes, wrong side of the surgery was done. Similarly, for hernias it happens. Sometimes it happens for the eye. Cataract, instead of right side, the left eye is operated. And you don't think these are all anecdotal cases. These are all happenings we have witnessed. Sometimes we are part of it, sometimes we are witnessing it, sometimes we are hearing it all over. And mind well, this is a global problem. It does not happen only in India. Anywhere in the world, one of the world's best centers also this happens. Sometimes they try to cover it, sometimes it is not possible. And then the patient has to suffer tremendously. You can just imagine what will happen to the patient. Then again, if you are operating on the right side of the brain wrongly, then you have to go and operate on the left side after opening. All this happens because of the lack of communication. Wrong drug administered. It happens all the time. So you have to say that you never are able to give a wrong drug to the patient by the wrong route and the wrong dose. So the moment you have a doubt, you must clarify it before giving. You tell somebody, okay, you give ketamine because that patient was very restless and patient has to undergo a CT scan. So they had given ketamine. But what has happened is the patient who was next in the on the bed, he was given ketamine, and then they suddenly found that critically ill patient is not responding without knowing that. And to know that, it took a lot of time. Luckily, the patient was resuscitated. But it does happen. So you must remember that it will happen if you not very sure that what order has been given to you or what order you give to your staff, whether they have understood correctly or not, must be there. Another never event will be patient falling down from the bed and the trolley. Mind well, this does not happen only to pediatric patients. Even adults, it does happen. Patients who are very restless, who are hypoxic, who are in various stages of shock, they are very restless. They sometimes fall down. So you have to see that this incidence does not happen wherever you are in managing any patient. Another thing is never do any procedure, either a minor procedure or a major procedure, without a written consent of the patient. This is very, very important. Not only medico-legally, because then when you are taking a written consent, you are explaining to the patient why this procedure is required, what are the benefits the patient is going to have, what exactly is going to be done, and what is required from him to understand. And you will also be telling him what complications can occur, especially if it is a very major surgery. You have to explain to the patient. So written consent, very, very important. All the ethical issues and all that, I think they will be addressed by the other speakers. I am just telling you broad overview of what all things can. But this is one thing: never administer, never do any procedure, never be a part of the team to do any surgery without a written consent of the patient. If the patient is not able to give the consent, you take, because patient is unconscious or patient is a minor, you take the consent of the adult, his relative. Then infection control protocols and all that, again one full class will be there. So I will not deal about it, but it is very, very important because nosocomial infections are very, very difficult to treat, because most of the organisms that are there in the institute, they are all resistant to most of the antibiotics. So you have to prevent nosocomial infections. Various methods how to prevent, that will be told to you in detail, like hand washing, scrubbing, and when you are going from one patient to the other, what precautions to be taken, all that. So but remember that hospital acquired infections are very difficult to treat. So you must give utmost importance to this also. And I have already told you what worldwide this communication can cause a lot of miscommunication can cause a lot of problems. I will just tell you a few examples. See, if you write one letter differently or one symbol differently, is it going to make any difference? When you are writing or prescribing a drug, if you write one word, one letter of the word wrongly, like what we have seen so many times in a crisis situation, you tell a short form of the drug. So many times, I don't know, you have heard or not during your postings, but you will come to know that people will tell, see, if you write D, if you write D instead of T, there is going to make a difference to the life of the patient. Like you ADR. So many times they will tell you give ADR. ADR. They will tell you, but instead of ADR, if they tell you to give ATR and you give ADR, that is adrenaline is given instead of atropine. So what is going to happen? The consequences are very, very bad because you are going to push. Atropine is generally giving very rapidly without dilution. Adrenaline you give rapidly, patient will have immediately ventricular tachycardia. Especially when patient is not required, it is not required and it may cause fibrillation. Similarly, if you write symbols, if you are not very particular about writing symbols and letters, what can happen? You can see first is a negative symbol and other is a positive symbol. Do you realize when things can go wrong in that? When you are giving a blood transfusion. A patient who is Rh negative, you give a positive blood. What will happen? So when you are writing the blood group of the patient, you have to be very particular that you write down negative, put a word beyond that. Positive also you put positive in addition to the sign so that you remember what you are doing and the communication goes correctly. So that's what I'm telling. A single word or a single line, if not written or drawn, can cause disastrous consequences for the patient. Similarly, instead of A, if you write B, same thing in a blood transfusion, what can happen? Wrong blood will be given to the patient. So these are all things which you must follow every day in all the departments. So give instructions properly. Don't tell, give ADR. I know people tell that. We have been telling everybody, don't tell like this. Tell, give adrenaline, give atropine. Because there are some drugs which are similar. Similar, like one or two words will be similarly. And ATR and ADR, generally we can, you may not hear it properly. And so you give a drug which is not required for the patient and that will have a disastrous consequences. Similarly, patient's name. You will say how patient's name is confused. You will not believe in JIPMER we get how many patients? Thousands of patients come. So some of them have the same name. One Kumuda, you say Kumuda, there will be one P Kumuda, there will be R Kumuda and there will be T Kumuda. And each Kumuda will be posted for a different procedure. So if you are not very sure, if you are not confirming, this word A, T, R and all is going to have a disastrous consequences. Patient will be unnecessarily subjected to some investigation. A patient who is sent to the CT room, a patient A who does not require CT will be undergoing CT unnecessary and having the complications or the radiation hazard is unnecessary. Patient will be exposed to radiation unnecessary. And this can happen in every department. I am not telling only here. In example only I am giving. They will all tell you in the details of all this. But you must remember that this can happen anywhere. So you have to be very, very careful. But now I have told you like so many things can go wrong. No? So how to prevent that? That is very important because prevention, as I have already told you, is very, very important. How to prevent it? So in JIPMER what we have got a checklist for all the procedures that you are doing. We have got standard protocols, what has to be done during the critical stage, critical crisis period. So if you follow the protocol, less likely that you will make a mistake. I am not saying 100% it will not be possible, but yes, less likely that you will reduce the incidence drastically if you follow the checklist. Like when the patient is being posted for operation theatre, there is a checklist. I will give you the copies of the checklist so that you can go in details and see. There is very simple checklist, nothing is very complicated. In that you have to know the name of the patient, age of the patient, sex of the patient, registration number, diagnosis of the patient, site of the operation, whether patient is having allergy or not, whether pre-anesthetic assessment is done or not. So very simple thing is there. You have to just tick mark. Only you have to do yes, tick mark, either yes or no, whether pre-medication is given to the patient or not. So this checklist if you follow, and this checklist especially for the surgical patients, we do it twice. One it is done in the ward, where the patient is being transferred from the ward to the operation theatre. Second checklist is there when the patient is put on the operation table. One particular person is assigned for that. They will be having this checklist on the board, and they will ask everybody, name of the patient is this, so you have to tell yes. Surgeon and the anesthetist will tell yes, name of the patient, age of the patient, site of surgery, everything. Even they will ask what is the amount of blood that probably may be lost. So you have checklist for everything. So if you follow the checklist for most of the procedures, you are less likely to make any mistake, and your patient is all saved of the disaster consequences of missing some important thing. Similarly, you have a checklist for MRI. Patient is going for MRI. You have to see that he or she is not wearing any magnetic objects. Similarly, the persons who are going inside the MRI room, doctors, paramedical workers, they also should see that. Otherwise, it will be disaster consequences. You will not believe that whole cylinder which was put inside the MRI room, it was magnetic, and you can imagine what can happen. It will just get sucked in because the magnetic power in the MRI is so huge. Even the big cylinder will get sucked in, and it may hit the patient or it may spoil your machine. Similarly, all the small objects, like your pens, belts, cell phones, spectacles, stethoscopes, all that, you have to see that. Follow the checklist, keep them all outside. Similarly, for the patient also, you keep them outside. Then only it is possible to provide. So for all the procedures in the institute, you have to have a checklist. Most of the checklists are there, and you have to follow it so that you don't have any disaster consequences. Similarly, checklist is for blood transfusion. I already told. You should know what is the blood group of the patient, whether that patient is going to receive or not, positive, negative, registration number. And again, that is also done at two places. One is in the blood bank when they are issuing the blood. One is in the ward or in the operation theatre when they are administering the blood. You have to do this. There is no shortcut for all this. These checklists are very simple. There is no shortcuts. If you try to do a shortcut, you will have more problems. So you remember that there is no shortcut in medicine. Follow basic principles. You see a patient, you just first check the vitals of the patient. Check the pulse is all right, blood pressure is all right, respiration is all right, whether he is conscious or not. If you are checking this, then you follow for the other things which are required. Immediately you should not jump onto the examination of other organs, or you wait. No, I will check the ultrasound. They will all, later on, once you become a postgraduate, they will tell you that ultrasound is very important. Yes, ultrasound is important. But first the patient should have the basic vital signs. If you are not checked the vital signs, then the ultrasound is not going to help you much. So first follow all these basic protocols which are there and these instructions are very simple, very easy to follow. It is not a very difficult thing, and hardly it takes 2 minutes. Every day in the operation theatre we are doing this. It hardly takes 1 minute in the operation theatre, 1 minute in the ward. 2 minutes only you have to spend. But you can prevent all these disaster consequences. So what you have to do now? You have to inculcate and you have to develop safety culture in yourself and all your colleagues also. You must remember that safety is very, very important. Like you drive, you have seen, no? When we are driving, their instructions are being given. You should wear a helmet if you are in a two-wheeler. If you are in a four-wheeler, you have to wear the belt. Otherwise, there are problems. People don't follow it, but then they have a disaster consequences. You go to our neurosurgery or emergency medical services department, you will see every day we get patients of head injury, all young people. So it is very sorry state of affairs that we are losing young people because they are not wearing helmet at all. So most of the injuries can be prevented if you are wearing a helmet. So this is all safety. This is also again a safety thing only. You should follow safety driving rules, plus you should wear a safety gear. And you will not, and it is so pathetic to see, all young people, they are coming there 20 years, 18 years, 30 years, less than that also, coming with head injuries because they are not wearing the helmet. So safety is utmost importance. You must remember that safety at all cost. I should not see you people driving a motorbike without a helmet. Because you are going to set an example. They follow you. They follow all the doctors. Whatever, they will first ask you, see, you know, if you are not wearing helmet and you are going to tell somebody, they are not going to listen to you at all. He himself is not following. So patient safety is very, very important, and develop a safety culture. To close, I will also like to again insist that you must know basic life support, advanced life support, and use of defibrillator at all the time. Even in your sleep, somebody wakes you up and tell you do the basic life support, you should be able to give it correctly. Because the cardiac arrest never occurs after it is given to you that okay, at 10:30 today somebody is going to have a cardiac arrest, so you read up and come. So it is always important that you must learn basic life support, advanced life support all the time, and patient safety at all the time must be your prime concern. And closing, I wish you all the best for your future progress in the patient care. Thank you. Any questions, queries, you people have any doubts, you please feel free to ask. If you have not understood something or you want me to clarify something, feel free. You should not think that I am going to have a problem with that. And another thing you must remember is, you have got a very good opportunity, that you are very lucky to serve the patients, to serve the people when they are having a pain or distress. So I will give you some pamphlets for both the things. You go through it. Anything anybody wants to ask, any questions, queries? Okay, thank you.